when I came back to New York, I had to look for a job. And I applied for a position in a chemical company, and I did that because they made insecticides and stuff like that. And that I was interviewed by them, but that never got anywhere. My professor at Illinois had suggested some university. It may have been in Utah. He said, well, you have to teach 20 hours a week there, whatever. But it's a good department. I said, I don't think so. And he suggested I look at in the Connecticut Agricultural Station. I went there, and what they mainly talked about was their retirement program. And this didn't, so I said, no. So I went back to New York, and then something happened. A friend of ours who had, she was actually our dentist, whom we had asked to see if she could help me getting into medical school because her son was a surgeon at Hopkins. And that hadn't gotten anywhere. Oh, I forgot to mention this. My father also had the mother of a son who had married one of my mother's nieces, and to see whether she could help me get into. She was prominent in Boston, prominent family. And she said, well, I could certainly get at Harvard if I converted. And, I'm very secular. I was brought up that way. But that I wasn't going to do. So now we'll come back. I forgot to mention that. So I went out to Illinois, and I worked for all this time and came back to New York. The same person said, you told me, I know somebody at Rockefeller Institute. Are you familiar with that? I said, no, but I've certainly heard about it. Would you be interested in that? Of course I would be interested. There are some very well-known neurophysiologists there, and it's known as a wonderful place. So I went to see this man, and he said, well, I can't do anything for you. I'm a junior person here. He was a plant virologist, and there was a department here that he was in. And then he helped me a lot. He said he couldn't help me. He said, who would you like to work with if you came here? I said, well, Dr. Lloyd, of course. He said, I'll go home and write him a letter. So I went home and I wrote him a letter. And I think at that time we always, there's something I didn't mention, but I'll come back to that. I had an apartment. So I went home and wrote him a letter. And to my surprise, I got a reply, and he asked me to come to Rockefeller to see him. And when I walked into Rockefeller, it was a completely new world for me. It looked completely different from what it looked today. A lot of the buildings that you see here, Abbey Aldrich Hall, I think the student residence, the hall where the amphitheater is, and I think the hospital was here, Flexner Hall was here, and Smith Hall. Well, there may have been something else. Certainly this building wasn't there. All of these were built when after Dr. Bronk came here. But anyway, so I shortly afterwards got he sent me a form that I should fill out. I had given him my thesis also on insects. This man was a mammalian physiologist. Why would he be interested in me? You know? And then I think it was in late August or very early September, I got a letter asking me to come here on a certain day at a certain time. I did, and he took me to see Dr. Rivers, who was the head of the hospital and who was acting director, Dr. Gasser having retired, and they were looking for a new president. So he took me to him. You know, I had interviewed with Dr. Lloyd, you know, obviously. And we talked a little bit, and he said, well, if Dr. Lloyd wants you, fine. So he appointed me, asked me what salary I wanted. I told him I've never thought of this, and I really hadn't. So he said, how about this much? Oh, you're married, I'll come back to that. And he said, well, how about that much? I said, fine. So, okay. So I was told to please report to Dr. Lloyd's laboratory on September 1st. So I went home. And I should mention at that time I was no longer living with my parents, because I had gotten married. What had happened was that back in 1947, these people we knew, they were friends of my father's, owned a restaurant on 72nd Street. They had owned a restaurant in Belgium before. They opened a restaurant by the same name in New York. And we went there because they were having a Passover Seder. And there they introduced me to their relatives who had a daughter. She was very attractive, sort of liked her, and we went out 2 or 3 times, a bit before I went to England, this was. And there was some correspondence, but there wasn't really very much. So when I came back to New York, and I think it may have been once when I came back from Illinois, or when once I came back on vacation, I was standing outside my parents' building. I don't know what we were waiting for. She came walking by. She was going to the end of the street. It was 72nd, you know, right near the Parkway, to play bridge. So we talked for a while. And the correspondence resumed. And when I was coming home from Illinois, I would come home every summer. We spent quite a bit of time together. And then I think before I went back to Illinois for the last time, we decided to get married, and we didn't tell anybody. So I drove out to Illinois. And so when I came back, and this would have been in June, I came back actually earlier because I wanted to finish my thesis at home, because Dr. Prosser, who was very nice and very, very good, was also a pain, because he kept coming around saying he had another idea. I thought I would never finish writing my thesis with it, so I went back home and wrote it. And while I did that, we arranged to get an apartment. And it was in a building next door. My father knew the owner. He got a studio there, which was quite nice. Anyway, so before and while I was looking for jobs, I was already living there with my wife.